You're never going to do it without your mask on.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Unity of Springfield New Thought and World Religion class. Today we have Les McClelland, Reverend Les McClelland, talking to us about the mystery of life. And he's going to start us out in prayer, so I'm just going to pass it on to him.
Very good. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Let's just take a moment, okay? As we enter into this next period of time of our life, we give thanks to our Heavenly Father for the many blessings that we have received and are receiving right now. We continue to be open and receptive to the guidance that is always available for us, and be thankful for the ability to recognize it. Bless us in all of our endeavors as we share this morning on the subject of the mystery of life. God bless us all in this journey. And so it is. Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah.
Very
Only
good.
because of
Very
the
good.
front row.
Very good. What I'm going to be sharing with you this morning is something about the life itself and the journey and the ministry, the mystery of it. And I'm going to start off with a reading that comes out of a book that Mr. Emmett Fox wrote back in the 1940s. He is contemporary with Charles and Myrtle Fillmore. We have a number of his books in our library, which we are trying to winnow through to release some of them, which is a hard thing to do. In this particular section, it's called Find and Use Your Inner Power by Emmett Fox. And this particular chapter is titled, Let's Not Be Cocksure. Have you an open mind? He asks. Is the window of your soul open for fresh air and the sunshine of truth to come in? Or is it closed and shuttered by mental laziness or the emotional congestion that we call prejudice? None of us knows how many fine things we have missed through being self-satisfied and cocksure. I do not think that anyone can be considered really intelligent who does not have a sense of balance and proportion, some sense of the value of evidence, and a readiness to examine new ideas with an open mind. The history of scientific discovery shows that almost every new step was opposed by the very people who should have welcomed it. Harvey was denounced for claiming that the blood circulates through the body instead of standing still, as was believed at the time. Galileo was persecuted for saying that the earth went around the sun, and learned men refused even to look through his telescope. Pasteur was branded a quack by his professional colleagues for advancing the germ theory of disease. The theory for which most scientists would be willing to go to this stake today. Jenner was threatened with the police for pioneering vaccination. That's a topic that's current in 1940s. And by the very medical bodies who sweat by it now. The finality of the atom, which was a scientific dogma in the childhood of most of us, remember this was the 1940s, has been completely discarded by the same scientific pundits today. Many of the truths that was put forward by the New Thought movement years and years ago are gradually being accepted by academic science, which at first laughed them to scorn. Right now you can sit in your home in New York and listened to the voice of a man talking in Paris or a woman singing in London. And it was only a very short time ago that such a feat would have seemed quite impossible. A few generations ago, the people who did it would have stood in serious danger of being hanged or even burned alive for witchcraft. Today, we see the images. We can actually have three-dimensional and four-dimensional. Probably the most incorrigible fool is the man who says that anything is impossible, that everything has been done, or that there is any limit to the conquests that divine intelligence working in mankind can achieve. The truth, he writes, is that nothing that is good is impossible. What is a mystery?
An enigma.
It can be. The actual definition is something not understood or beyond understanding. In my opinion, we're all living within the mystery of what we call life. We've been provided with all the tools required to actually experience the fullness of life. Lack in and of itself, thank you. Good. You may be able to hear me a little better. Very good.
Yeah.
I'll go back a statement. Lack is a figment of our imagination. When we compare what we have with what others may have, we actually begin to focus upon creating the environment for lack to survive and to be brought into manifestation. Once we begin to compare ourselves to other people, we actually begin to look for the differences rather than the similarities. We actually begin to experience those differences as a result of that in the life that we're living. A lady by the name of Harriet Beecher Stowe wrote a poem called Life's Mystery. I'd like to read it with you, or to you, for you. She writes, "Deep, restless as the ocean, has surged and wailed for ages to and fro. Earth's generations watch its ceaseless motion, as in and out its hollow moanings flow. Shivering and yearning by that unknown sea, let my soul calm itself, O Christ, in thee. Life sorrows with inexorable power, sweet desolation o'er this mortal plain, and human loves and hopes fly as the chaff borne by the whirlwind from the ripened grain. Ah, when before that blast my hopes all flee, let my soul calm itself, O Christ, in thee. Between the mysteries of death and life, thou standest, loving, guiding, not explaining. We ask, and thou art silent, yet we gaze, and our charmed hearts forget their dear complaining. No crushing faith, no stony destiny, O Lamb that has been slain, we find in thee. The many waves of thought, the mighty tides, the groundswell that rolls up from other lands, from far-off worlds, from dim eternal shores, whose echo dashes on life's wave-worn strands. This vague, dark tumult of the inner sea grows calm, grows bright, O risen Lord, in thee. Thy pierced hand guides the mysterious wheels, the thorn-crowned brow now wears the crown of power. And when the dread enigma presseth sore. The patient voice saith, watch with me 1 hour. As sinks the moaning river in the sea, in silver peace, so sinks my soul in thee. Leo Biscaglia once made an interesting statement. He says, life is a great and wondrous mystery, and the only thing we know that we have for sure is what we have right here and right now. And he ends his statement with, don't miss it. Don't miss it. It's my understanding that we're able to demonstrate in a meaningful manner anything in the physical world. We first must be preparing ourselves to be able to receive it. We must develop the consciousness that can accommodate the demands that that demonstration will make upon us. So be careful for what you wish for, because you may get it. And you may be unprepared to handle it. And as a result of that, it will slip through your fingers like water in the sifting sands of life. Life in and of itself is a journey. I'd like to share with you something from Charles Fillmore, who he wrote in 1946. And it's a revelation that happened within his consciousness only because he was ready to receive it. And I quote, he wrote, in the universal mind principle, what Jesus called the Father, there is a substance. Hear that. There is a substance that also includes the mother or seed of all visible substance. It is the only real substance because it is unchangeable. It is what it was yesterday and what it will be tomorrow. While the visible substance is in constant transition. Everything in the physical world is in transition. It's coming. And once you experience it, or once you begin to see it or believe that it is real, it is in the process of moving on. In order to accommodate that change, which is our greatest challenge, I think, in life, is that we must develop a consciousness that is able to embrace that thing we call change. How many of you have pictures of yourself when you were a small child? Yeah. How do you look today? World of difference, isn't it? Yeah. But what we have of that period of time is a memory. A memory that has been transformed, and a transition is in the process of taking place. Yes?
I'll borrow from John Stewart. I look like an anti-smoking ad.
An anti-smoking ad. Yeah. I won't claim for any of us to look. but
I'll
even
admit it.
Yeah.
Compared to them.
Yeah. We've changed.
Yes.
And we will change more. The determination of what our change is going to be like has nothing to do with what we look like. It has everything to do with what is happening within us. And I'm not talking about physical things. I'm talking about things that are taking place within our minds and within our consciousness. What are we feeding ourselves? What are we judging to be good and not so good? See, I don't believe really there's really bad. I think there is really not so good things. And it's in the realm of not so good that we have our greatest challenges, because we want to judge. We want to judge others, but we don't judge ourselves. We have a tendency to position ourselves in a manner of we know it all, and therefore we have the ability, because of our background or whatever, we have the ability to make a judgment upon everyone else. The origin or source, Mr. Fillmore writes, of all substance is the idea of substance. It is purely spiritual and can be apprehended only by the mind. It's never visible to the eye, nor can it be sensed by man through any of the bodily features or faculties. Bible authorities say that the Almighty in Genesis should have been translated El Shaddai, the breasted one. Thus, God is found to include both the male and the female principle. In other words, God is multifaceted. When the mind has centered its intention upon this idea of substance long enough, strongly enough, it generates the consciousness of substance. And through the powers of the various faculties of the mind in right relation, it can actually form physical substance. Jesus in this way brought into visibility the loaves and fishes to feed the 5,000. We cannot explain how that happened from a physical point of view. How does one materialize that? You can't explain that to someone that does not know, any more than you can explain to someone really how you really feel about something. You can attempt to express your feelings, but it's never adequate enough. A person that can talk about something can only share what they've experienced. They cannot convey to you the fullness of that experience. They can hint at it. That's the best they can do. That's the best I can do. That's the best anybody can do. So in our time this morning, I'd like for you to just think about the experiences that you've gone through in your life that have happened, that you wish had not happened. Not the ones that you are thankful for, necessarily, but the ones that cause you the most difficulty. How have you resolved them? How have you grown from them? Would be the next question. Who would like to share something along that line this morning? Anybody willing to share something that took place in your life that you're not necessarily happy about, but that you're thankful that occurred, that you've grown from it? Anybody got an answer? Okay.
Thank you. And Les, I'm talking about this stuff this morning, of course, in my talk, so not this particular thing, but my story's kind of out there, but one of the things was when I was married to my second husband, and he was struggling with active alcoholism. But the process of that was incredibly painful for me. I mean, it was painful for him, but my experience was incredibly painful because of what happened during those relapses. And I took that pain into my body. And so my regret is that I didn't utilize the tools, or I just didn't know how to utilize the tools at that time to keep that pain from going into my body, which I deal with now. But I'm so grateful for the experience because I grew so much from the experience. But I am still dealing with some of that. And as soon as you asked that question, I was like, oh, wow, because that's one of the things I've been really working on.
Yeah.
Is letting go of the pain.
Yeah.
That is, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, she's gonna bring a microphone for you to use.
Oh, okay. I've had 3 wives and buried 2 of them. And at the death of each one, of course, was a traumatic experience. And each time, of course, it was not something that was desirable or I would enjoy.
Sure.
But looking back upon it, it could have been no other way, because each wife was appropriate to the time of life that I was in. I couldn't see it at the time. It was one was to have children and go through all the young folks' stuff. The second one was a mature woman who brought me maturity and grace. And now I'm in a great adventure. I wasn't ready for this great adventure at all. And they were all painful up to now. But now I'm reaping the benefit of that life's experience.
That's fantastic. Good. Anybody else?
Mine was going through, and well, actually all of the run up to my divorce from my first wife of 30. I was married to her for 30 years, so it's very much akin to mourning a death.
Sure.
You think about all of the good times and the bad times, and you know, you invest a lot in a relationship for 30 years. It takes a lot of pain and discomfiture. Mine was like also due to the alcoholism of my former spouse. And when I think about what I did to cope with it and to grow, it was actually what brought me to decide to get divorced was the realization that I was probably going to essentially be dead within a few years if I was going to stay in that, because I was unable to detach from her and until I just left her. And it was detrimental to my physical and emotional mental health. But I coped by using my friends, my own 12-step recovery program, and Al-Anon and clergy. I actually came here and got counseling from Sue. And those I recommend strongly for the people. Don't do what many times I know for myself, I just want to isolate when I'm in pain. I don't want people to see me. I don't want to open up. I just want to close up like a turtle and just, and that's the worst thing that a person can do. But yeah, these are thank you for bringing this meaning of life to the fore here, because it makes a person think about very deep and important matters.
Yeah. Thank you. Anybody else?
Well, that for me was when I had my little girl, and she had cerebral palsy. But at that time, I didn't understand what was going on, and my answer was because God hated me, things like that. And things of that beautiful girl that come to my life might change life like 60 grades, So it's like, and because of her, we moved to another country, and we ended up here in Missouri and things like that. If you will ask me when I was in Mexico that I will be here at this time, I won't believe anybody, because I was when I was single, I was gonna have my life together over there. So it's like, but it was so different. I was another person. I can turn back and see that Teresa that doesn't exist, because I was living more for ego than for, spirituality, or I didn't know nothing about this, but things of her my life changed completely in another way. So I'm so grateful for that.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, what you have just heard, witnessed, and experienced, I'm sure you experienced some emotional attachment to the stories, did you not?
Yep.
Okay. The question that I have to present to you is, how are you handling it? Did you feel sorry? Did you feel happy or glad? What did you learn from the story? That's the most important thing. is what we are learning from the story. There are many stories that are taking place in our world today, some of which make us really agitated. Okay? We do. We get a little agitated about things that are taking place, and we allow that agitation to affect us. And the agitation comes within our own bodies. And it causes us to have indigestion, or can cause us to have indigestion. We can be angry, we can be totally upset. And yet we feel like if we're going to have those feelings, we're justified in having them. Are we not? Don't you feel justified?
Yeah.
Is there anybody not feeling justified in that? Yeah, you bet. But the fact is in the process. It is a process through which life is changing. And many people play many parts in that change. Nothing is left untouched. The entire consciousness of just not our country, not just this church, but every country and every individual throughout the world is going through that same process. 700,000 people have died because of a pandemic in our country. We call that horrendous. And yet, why do we call it horrendous?
Because it was preventable,
Possibly.
at least some of them.
Possibly. But if
I don't
we
believe just possibly.
if we call it horrendous, then we're calling it of no value. It has value. Every individual who has died has value and has been a part of that, because if we're spiritual beings living in a physical world, we're more than physical, and our bodies, when it comes time to go, will go. Will go. But we're spiritual beings dealing with spiritual substance that is able to materialize in this physical world in a manner that allows things to change in a gradual way. That's hard, that's a hard teaching. And that yet is what Mr. Fillmore discovered in the 1940s. And we're still wrestling with it. Do you know who was his teacher? Jesus Christ. The teachings of Jesus Christ out of the Bible. If you go into his writings and get familiar with what he has to say, and Myrtle's writings and what she had to say, he never really thought about creating a movement called Unity. What he really was focused upon is helping people who claim to be Christians to be better Christians. That's what he was all about, and what she was all about. But they took a different approach. He says, the faculty of dealing with ideas is open to all men and women. It's not given to privileged persons and withheld from others. And what he's talking about there is the fact that we are able to walk in the footsteps of that Christ, that Jesus Christ that the Bible talks a lot about, that we don't tend to talk a lot about today in New Thought. But Jesus talks about it. And he says, not only am I able to do these things or be a part of them, but I can't do it by myself, because it's the Father that does the work through me, not me. If I claim to be doing it, then I lie. So each and every one of us has the capacity within us to be able to manifest things in our lives, and that we have cannot be taken from us. For it is if it is ours, it is ours. No one can rob us of the good that our Heavenly Father provides us. Somebody had a question? Yes.
I just had a comment about Gandhi. What I like one of his quotes that he said, I like your Christ, and I'm going to paraphrase it, but I don't like the followers of Christ because they aren't acting like Christ does or follow.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, that sounds like a judgment, but in my opinion, judgments are, if it's true, it's not really a judgment. And,
Right.
If we all search our own hearts, most of the time we don't act like Jesus Christ.
Yeah. The interesting
That's
thing
a
about
tough
that, and let me deal with judgment real quick. It's a real quick thing. Jesus doesn't say to not judge. He says you judge, but judge righteously. In other words, get the full picture.
Right.
Not focused upon that is causing the discomfort within you, but get the full picture. In other words, try to understand the history from the journey that has brought this forth and the direction it is moving. See the full picture. Once we can understand, I think, the full picture, forgiveness is an automatic thing, believe it or not. You don't have to force yourself to forgive if you understand the journey. The full picture provides that. We can lose ourselves in the moment and make all kinds of judgments of good, bad, indifference, how dare they, or how dare this group do this or do that or whatever. Get the full picture. Get the full picture. And you will discover a whole new way of living. He says, Mr. Fillmore said, Jesus tells those that followed him after listening to his instructions on the mountainside, talking about the 5,000, and having been fed physically by the loaves and fishes, he makes this following point, that they must not labor for the food that perishes, but for the food that abideth unto eternal life. That's the spiritual substance he's talking about. He's not talking about fish. He's not talking about bread. He's talking about substance, spiritual substance is what he's talking about. How many of us, including myself, how many of us are realizing that we're now in the process and have been for our entire journey of life, been utilizing spiritual substance? Of course. Yeah. It's a natural thing. It's not an unnormal thing. It is a part of the substance that makes up the manifestation of physical things possible. That's the reason why there is nothing that can cause you to lose that which you cherish. There's nothing. We believe there is, because we have a tendency to look out to others and say, well, you're at fault. You did it. I saw you do it. I saw you on television tell this and that and whatever. I know you did it, and you're not going to get away with it. But we're using spiritual substance. The result of using spiritual substance to manifest the anger, the frustration that is occurring within you is something you may not want to do. But unless you have the consciousness to be able to handle it, you will do it anyway. We all do it. We all do it. Again, this is a hard teaching. It really is. It's not new. It's been present throughout the time immemorial. It's a hard teaching, and like today, those who hear this could not comprehend the depth of the message of Christ at the time, nor do we comprehend it now. We really don't. I don't. Anybody here comprehend? If you do, I want to visit with you. You know, because I don't. I do the best I can, and sometimes I'm judged as being inadequate. I'm judged for not understanding, for not listening. I mean, people in my circle of life, you know, they have viewpoints of me. Some of them strong. Yeah. Huh?
Oh.
You didn't see it.
Better wake up.
You know, part of my love for metaphysics, part of my love for these teachings is that for me, the teachings say it doesn't have to be a mystery. It doesn't have to be unknown. We're not victims of this world, of the physical world. And so I truly believe that it is possible to know those truths. I believe it is possible to understand them and to live them and experience them here in the physical world. Does that mean I know everything right now? No. But if I didn't believe it was possible, metaphysics wouldn't make any sense. That's to me how it's different from fundamental Christianity or fundamental type beliefs and stuff, is that it's saying that you can understand, you can do it and live it. And so, so if you ask, is there anyone that can understand the mystery? I would say, I don't think I could believe in metaphysics and say that no, yes, every one of us can. Every one of us can live it. Every one of us can experience those things here. I don't know. That's just how.
Very good.
Yeah.
At the same time, when you take what I call a cosmic perspective, we're still children.
You bet.
The evolution of humankind has come a long way from multiple retribution to an eye for an eye, to love your neighbor, to who knows where. And so the way it looks to me is that we understand at the level at which we are. And we are looking always for deeper, for more depth in our understanding to further our evolution. And when we lose track of that, we're stuck. But we have to give ourselves a little time to mature.
Mm-hmm.
We're maturing in our life individually, and humankind is doing the same thing.
Right. The point I wanted to make real quick. Yeah, right here.
I was just going to say something really quick about the evolution of consciousness actually makes it a little easier to forgive.
Yeah.
At least I know it did for me when I recognized that everyone on the planet is doing the best that they can with their understanding and their level of consciousness. And consciousness is evolving. And that includes me, it includes everyone that I've interacted with. If somebody had bad behavior, that's the level of consciousness that they were at the time.
Right.
And my interaction with a negative situation, that's the level of consciousness that I was at. And that makes things way more understandable and way more forgivable. So.
Yeah, sometimes when I think I just can't for the life of me understand somebody, then I'm glad I don't sometimes, because I'm not at that level to understand why someone would do such and such or believe such and such. Anybody else?
The point is this, that I want to try to drive home for this morning, is that where we are right now doesn't sufficiently prepare us to manifest what is possible. And why can I say that? Because if we were able to do that, it would be a natural thing to manifest it. As natural as you taking your next breath of air. It would be no effort. It would be effortlessly done. And it would be done in a manner that nurtures, because all that is good is not, what did he say? Impossible. All that is good is not impossible. Sometimes it seems like that. Sometimes we don't know the way out that we're looking for. The teachings of Christ say we must confront. We must basically address things to manifest something better. Yes.
Everything that you've been talking about has just been leading me to think about an editorial that I read recently regarding reparations. That I don't know if a lot of you are aware of this or not, but almost all, or probably all, of the Ivy League schools, they benefited from and started by the sale of human lives by slaves. But for example, the first one recently that even acknowledged and actually has started potentially a program for making reparations to Black people for their history is Brown University, and they actually got started from the return on the sale of 272 slaves.
Right.
That was whatever you want to call the stake that started the school. So you were mentioning things about history, and our consciousness can evolve but it needs to be aware of our past.
Mm-hmm.
And many times we do need to examine our past history, and we need to make those reparations in order to be in sync with our source and in sync with to make it right, if you will. Many people would probably disagree with that, but that's what, in my opinion, if this level of consciousness is evolving into something that's acceptable to the higher power that I subscribe to, then something needs to be done about that particular issue. That's just one of many, but
Sure.
that was just one example.
I'm going to ask a question based upon that. And that is, I don't ask for a witness of your acceptance or non-acceptance of what you just shared. But how did you feel when you heard what he said concerning reparations and also the sale of human life, human beings, for the benefit of something else? Just think about that for a moment. Your consciousness, the current consciousness that exists within you, is generating a response of acceptance, rejection, or tolerance. Is something going on inside of you. And it may not be anything similar to what's going on inside of the person that's sitting in front of you or behind you. But if that's your journey, that is also your opportunity to utilize spiritual substance. And substance is not like a grain of sand or a salt or anything along that line. It's not the table, it's not the very body that houses the soul within which you are experiencing life. It has nothing to do with it. It is spiritual substance. It's something so much grander than that. It's not as dense as the physical world. It isn't. It's more real. It's the essence out of which things emerge.
With the well, a lot of what was said, when you are one with the source, then the unknown becomes known. And benevolence and virtue is who you become. So those things that occurred that may make reparations considered would never occur because they would have not occurred to begin with. So I think the key of thinking of what is unknown, if it is known, and you are one with source, then it's just a natural extension of whatever virtue that you have.
Well, in my personal opinion, in my life, I had to repair all this part of me before I can understand about unknown or source. I agree with what's her name? Sorry. Wendy, sorry, Wendy. Because when I was in this process, I went to Al-Anon to find myself because I was really codependent.
Sure.
And then I started looking for, something higher than me. So I found unity and these principles, but before that, I didn't have an idea that I have to forgive myself and all. I didn't know myself actually.
Yeah.
So it has been like all this process. And when they say that, I feel inside of me that there's something beautiful, that there's something somewhere that I can believe in and I can trust because it's there and I feel it somehow. So and that's my my point. I want to go there and trust and follow
Sure.
the beauty.
So for me, the challenge is I live in this physical body right now, and I live in this physical world with other people, and we're having experiences. And when I hear to judge with right judgment, it's saying that I need to not judge anything from this physical perspective. I judge from who we really are. And that my understanding of metaphysics says that which I give my attention to, I am participating in the creation of it here in this manifest world, as well as in the spiritual world again. But particularly the experience, because we're talking about the things that are happening around us now. And so no matter what side I take in a conflict, if I am participating in the conflict, I am adding to the conflict. That's looking at it from a right way of looking at it.
Right.
I can't go, but I justify it because of this, or even a justification that anybody would say is true. I have to look at how I create, and I create through my focus and participation. And that's a challenge, because when things are happening, we want to participate, we want to do something, but how do we do it from that higher perspective for giving to the homeless, say. If I'm giving to the homeless from a consciousness that says these poor people, I can only add to the problem of homelessness. But if I give from a consciousness of these amazing creators and I'm just part of their journey and I'm a part of that creation and we're all in the flow. So to me, that's what I have to consciously keep thinking of is how can I keep the truth, the motive behind the things that I do.
Right. What you just shared with you is sort of like a wrestling match, isn't it? We wrestle with the experiences of life. Okay. And we're running out of time.
About 3 more minutes.
3 more minutes. I hope I have been successful in causing you to think about your own journey, not anybody else's. Not even the people that you see, the pundits you see on television today, or that you listen to on your automobile radio, or the recording that you have on a CD that you put in, or your cell phone that you have that is a marvelous instrument that has more capabilities than I know how to use. There's all kinds of stuff going on in our world. But hopefully, this session that we've experienced here this morning has caused us to refocus ourselves on what we're all about. Not everyone is in the same place. In fact, I would be so bold to say that no one is in the same place. We have different opinions, we have different journeys, we have different opportunities that exist only in the world, in this physical world. Okay? But we all have one thing in common. The very spiritual substance of creation itself is coursing through our entire bodies, our entire mind. It's the same thing. No one has more of it than anybody else. We all have access, equal access. We all do. And sometimes we struggle with it. And other times, it just simply happens to our surprise. I ask you to just take a moment as we close this time together. Lord, help us in our journey. This is a request that I make this morning for all of us. Help us do justice to the privilege of living the life that we're living. Bless us all in that journey. Help us learn to be of assistance and support to one another. Help us understand that the greatest release from all things is actually through the act of just simply seeing the larger picture. Seek to understand. And only you can discover that understanding that is right for you, that will propel you forward. For that we give our thanks. Amen. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Les. That was amazing. And now we've reached the time where we're going to pass the basket. And if you are watching online, you can send a check to the church. You can also pay through PayPal with CCUnity at sbcglobal.net or through the Tidely app. It's squealing. I think I might use your microphone. Yeah, it's better. Yeah, okay. And we do have some announcements. So as the basket's passing, I will go through the announcement. Next week, Karen Crago is discussing the interpretation of Jesus' words as metaphors. October 12th at 6 p.m., we are having a cold weather shelter meeting for people who want to give to our vulnerable population. October 22nd, 5:30 to 7:30, there is a fall fashion boutique here at the church. And grounds cleanup is at 9 a.m. October 23rd. And we just want to say thank you again, Les. It was a really great talk. And everybody, that's it.
Is there a couple of dollars in that now? Are there a couple of dollar bills in that basket now?